Good morning, everyone. This is Jamie from Northwoods, and on behalf of our team, I want to thank you so much for joining us today to learn more about how you can use digital advertising to reach and target your buying audience and drive more qualified leads. Today's webinar is the third in our Digital Marketing for Manufacturers Learning series, which runs throughout October in celebration of Manufacturing Month. We have one additional webinar next week that will wrap up our series. We'll be focused on content marketing. So we hope you'll consider joining us if you haven't already signed up. Details and registration can be found at learnatnorthwoods.com/octoberlearning. Today's webinar is scheduled for 1 hour, and we should have plenty of time for Q&A. As questions come up while you're listening, please go ahead and submit them in the chat area, and we'll answer as many as possible during the Q&A session. Also, a link to a recording of today's webinar will be emailed to you in the next day or two. So watch for that if you'd like to re-listen or share the recording with colleagues. For those of you who are new to our webinars, or if you're not familiar with Northwoods, I want to take just a quick minute to introduce ourselves. Northwoods is a digital strategy, digital marketing, and software development company located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We've been helping companies grow their online presence since 1997 and have worked with more than 750 clients of all sizes across a variety of different industries. One of our core values here at Northwoods is lifelong learning. And one of the ways we live out that value is by offering workshops and webinars on a variety of digital topics in order to share our knowledge with others. You can check out our schedule of upcoming programs at learnatnorthwoods.com. So enough about us, let's go ahead and dive into digital advertising. Your speaker today is Barrett Wainscott. Barrett is our digital advertising lead here at Northwoods and has been actively managing paid media campaigns for more than 8 years. He's certified in Google Ads, Bing Ads, and Google Analytics. His passion lies in paid media, digital marketing, and conversion optimization. Through data, testing, and precise targeting, Barrett helps our clients achieve their paid media objectives and take their digital marketing to the next level. Barrett, take it away.
We'll go ahead and get started. As Jamie mentioned, my name is Barrett Wainscott. I'm the digital advertising lead here at Northwoods. I've been doing digital advertising since the beginning of 2011 and have managed millions of dollars in ad spend across really all kind of the main channels of digital advertising that you can think of: Google, Bing, Facebook, Amazon, etc. You name it, we've been there. So we will be spending about 45 minutes to an hour talking through 5 different digital advertising strategies that have proven effective for manufacturers and the B2B space in general. If you have any questions as we go through today, feel free to use the chat box feature and submit them at any time. And we'll spend some time at the end of the webinar today walking through those questions, just to get kind of an understanding for myself of who exactly is on the call before we get started, just to kind of see what industries everyone is in. If you could use the chat feature to answer this real quick before we get started: how many manufacturers do we have on the call today? If you're a manufacturer, go ahead and say yes. If you're not, go ahead and say no. It's perfectly fine if we have some non-manufacturers on the call as well. Okay, so it looks like we have about 95% manufacturers, so that's great. For those of you that are not manufacturers, that's no problem whatsoever. Just think about the strategies that we're going through today in sort of a light that's applicable to your business. It would definitely will still apply. Even though these strategies are sort of tailored towards the manufacturing space, they do apply to other B2B spaces as well. So we'll go ahead and get started today. As far as Northwoods goes, just so everyone is aware before we jump into the strategies themselves, we do, of course, offer digital marketing services in really all of the core spaces, from SEO to digital advertising on all the core channels, to analytics, as well as email marketing. And just to prove that we do, in fact, know what we're talking about before we go ahead and give you a bunch of ideas and strategies to implement into your business, this is just one case study from a recent campaign that we ran. You can see on the bottom chart, we took over this campaign in roughly August of last year. And since then, you can see kind of the big charts on the top. We were able to increase website visitors dramatically for roughly the same spend, just a touch more, because the client actually ended up increasing their spend based on the leads that they were receiving. And you can see a major increase in conversions directly from ads. So we'll talk through the strategies that we use for this that you can apply to your business as well. So with that in mind, one thing that we want to just touch on quick before we jump into the strategies, just to kind of lay the ground floor, is what the digital advertising landscape looks like today, what our options are, where users are hanging out and spending their time, so that we can sort of take that and then pursue those paths to really spend our time and our dollars wisely on what the most effective routes and channels are to pursue today. So the digital advertising landscape today is really scattered, right? You can choose to advertise on Google, YouTube, Amazon, Bing, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and these are just some of the big ones, right? All these littler social ones you have as well, Quora, Snapchat, and then you get into some of these others, Reddit, Ground Truth, which is a proximity marketing platform, Spotify, and Yelp. So we have a ton of options at our fingertips as digital advertisers. And so it starts to become a little overwhelming at some points if you're just getting started in the digital advertising space of where should I be spending my time and my money. And so one of the first things we look at is how can we reach our audience? And so we want to look at where they're paying attention to, what devices, and what channels specifically. So one thing that is very clear in today's world is that we are addicted to our cell phones, right? We are literally running into poles. We are even falling into big doors because we're staring at cell phones as we're walking. And this, I mean, is a bit of a joke, but it's actually completely realistic. Just last weekend, I was walking down the street with a couple buddies of mine, and he looked exactly like the guy on the left. He literally ran into the pole as he was staring at his phone. So we today in 2019 are absolutely addicted to our cell phones. And so that is something to keep in mind as we decide what channels and what type of ads and ad formats we want to present to our prospects. So taking that a step further, we know that we're addicted to our cell phones. Even further, we are addicted to, on average, we're addicted to social. The average user scrolls through 300 feet of social media content every single day. That's essentially like staring at the grass on the football field and walking across 3 different football fields every single day. And so that allows us to put our message in front of users because that's where they're spending their time and that's where they're really staring at every single day. So to kind of further that point, we really just cannot get enough. The average user is spending 2.5 hours every single day on smartphones. When you expand that out into tablets, the average user is spending 4.5 hours. So nearly 3 hours on smartphones, 4.5 hours on tablets specifically. Social interactions over an hour every day, hour and 15 minutes is being spent on social. Users are touching their phone 2,600 times on average every single day. Then if we dive deeper into social specifically to figure out exactly which social channels within social users are spending their time on, it becomes very clear that Facebook is kind of the clear outlier in where users are spending the most time, with the next 2 closest followers being Snapchat and Instagram. And of course, the sort of demographic really varies between each channel here. So that's of course something to consider as we put our ads together, depending on what market we're in. So Facebook is kind of a big one to jump out, in that users are spending 45 minutes every single day on Facebook specifically. It is becoming harder and harder to catch attention of users with our ads. This chart goes all the way back to 1990. And you can see just over time here with this chart, the more the internet and the smartphone has come into play, it has become easier and easier for advertisers to put their message out into the world, and thus becoming harder to catch the attention of the users we're trying to target. And the last point we'll make here on the landscape, on the chart on the left, the red columns, the red column represents digital advertising spending, and the black column represents traditional advertising spending. So things like billboards, radio, TV, etc. And so this year is the first year that ad spend in digital has passed up traditional. And so it is now becoming more and more important to get really good at digital marketing from an advertising perspective. And you can see the trend of those charts. It's only going to become more and more important to get really good at that as time goes on, since that is where users are spending their time today. So to summarize what we just went through, the landscape today, we have more ads, we have scattered attention of users, we have countless channels to choose from, we have really addicted mobile users and addicted social users. So the question becomes, how do we capture them? And that's what we will start to look at now. So the first strategy is one that can be sort of obvious, but it's so important that I can't skip it. And there are some sort of implications within it that I want to talk through, that depending on sort of your competency within manufacturing, can be a pro or it can be a con based on sort of a few factors. So the first strategy is leveraging paid search to capture users while they're in their intent mindset. So we'll go ahead and really talk through what that means and how you can apply that to your business. So first, just a step back at a really high level, and I promise we'll get more detailed here in a sec, but just to really clarify for everyone what paid search is exactly. When you search something on Google, you have a number of different results. You have all kinds of different organic results, and paid search is basically allowing yourself to show at the top of the search result by paying a certain amount for every single click that you receive. And so Google, of course, is the first place to start here, since in the US they receive 88% of the searches for search engines in general. And then once you really get honed in on Google, if you have a really strong paid search campaign going, you can of course expand that out into Bing, which is the second highest search engine in the US, sitting at 6% of searches. So diving a little bit deeper and talking about why paid search and why it's so important is really because you have intent. You have users who are actively looking for your product or service in that moment. This is the absolute most important time in digital to be in front of your audience. So sort of the difference between a Google ad and just to take Facebook ad as an example, is Google, you're getting in front of the user while they want your product or service in that moment. Facebook, on the flip side, is almost more of like a really targeted billboard where you're trying to catch your right target audience, but in the moment where they may or may not be wanting your service. So you're trying to really catch their attention and get them to do something that they may not necessarily want to do in that moment. So the path of least resistance to acquire a lead is really Google while they're searching for that product or service. And that's why it's so important that I just can't skip it. So there are a few drawbacks of paid search. It's not all, hunky-dory. So poorly converting websites is a big factor, right? Some websites, they convert great and you get a constant lead flow. Some really do not. Another big factor is that sometimes keywords are just simply very expensive. It really depends on the industry. And so we'll look at some examples and talk about how you can find out what your keyword cost is for your vertical in a moment here. But to talk through that, I guess in a little more detail, if you have a cost per click that is $1 a click, that's very reasonable. You might be able to get a good flow of leads with that price. If you have a cost per click that's $50 for every single click, that's really cost prohibitive, and you're sort of forced to come up with more creative solutions, which we have a few for you here today. So to throw out some examples here, there is an extension on Google called Keywords Everywhere that you can install. Unfortunately, it used to be free, and starting October 1st, they just made it a paid tool, but it is a very cheap tool as well. I think it's something like $1 for 100,000 searches or something like that. So it's a tool that you can use to see what the cost per click is for the keywords in your industry. So if we just go ahead and look at a few examples here, digital marketing agency as one example, and you can see sort of the red highlighted throughout here, the more specific keywords. So digital marketing agency Milwaukee, near me, etc. So the range is anywhere from $8 to $23 for a single click. And just another fun fact for you is the average website converts at 4%. So if I had 100 of these clicks, it might cost me, let's see here, it might cost me $2,000 if it's $20 a click. And I would get, maybe 4 leads out of that. So it's really expensive. It's not, it's not necessarily the end of the world. You could still do it, but it's not ideal. There are probably cheaper routes to acquire leads. So let's go ahead and look through some other examples here. I do have some positives for you as well. Software development, another really expensive one at $26 for every single click. We have warehouse fulfillment, anywhere from $8 to $50 for a single click. And these are sort of extreme examples. HR software, anywhere from $26 to $36 for a single click. And then there are some low-cost examples. So it really is something to look into before pursuing the paid search strategy in general, is what is the cost of your keyword, right? So conveyor belt repair, anywhere from $1.50 to $3, very reasonable price point. And just kind of run through a few more here. Medical supplies. I have a friend who owns a medical supply company, $2 to $3 a click, very reasonable price point. China buying agent, if you're sourcing products from China, extremely cheap cost per click, great way to find new clients. Phone manufacturer, I have another friend in this space, and also a great cost per click, right? $1.50 compared to $2.50. So you're going to get much lower lead costs if you have a good cost per click here than if you're running at $20 to $30 cost per click. So this is something to pay attention to before just blindly going down the paid search path. So what happens if your keywords are expensive? We have a few options for you. And even if they are cheap and reasonable, we still have a few options that can complement that first strategy as well. So one strategy that we've used a number of times that works really well is something called call-only ads. And this is also via Google search, but the difference is, instead of sending a user to your website and then wanting them to convert there via a contact form or something of that nature on your website, instead they will see the ad on Google, and if they click the ad, they're prompted to make the phone call right then and there, and so they don't even go to your website. And so these are much higher converting. So if you have $20 a click, it doesn't necessarily matter in this case, because I'm more than happy to pay $20 for a phone call. So let's kind of talk through what this strategy looks like, but that's sort of the high level overview of it. So this is really a really vital strategy when your search terms are too expensive to target on Google. So this is kind of the first if then, I guess, scenario of, okay, your keywords are expensive, let's try some call only ads. Even if your keywords are cheap, it's still wise to test these against your text ads and just see which produces you better results. It really is sort of dependent on the industry. So let's take some actual case study example here and walk through it. So we had a client who is an exterior painting contractor. I know this is obviously an example outside of the manufacturing space, but the same applies. So their cost per click was $8 to $14 for a single click. They really did not have a strong website. It was very basic, very outdated. We didn't feel confident that it was really going to convert. And he was, not necessarily wanting to go through a whole web design process. He just wanted leads, right? He wanted leads for his summer painting season. And so we went down a route of call-only ads for this particular client. And so we'll kind of walk through what that looks like. So you can see the keywords are, just really expensive for really everything he was trying to target. So let's look at some examples of what a mobile search on Google looks like. So call-only ads, I guess, to just point out real quick, are mobile specific. They do not apply to desktop whatsoever. So if you put a search term into Google on mobile, this is basically an example of the search result you get. It is very ad heavy. On the top left is sort of the first preview you see, and then if you scroll down, that's what shows up on the right. So the top 3 positions are pure ads. This particular screenshot, none of these companies are doing call only ads. One does have something called a call extension, where it has the call option in addition to the text ad that takes you to your website. And then below the ad, so the ads get, the first full page on mobile plus a little bit into your second page as you scroll down. And then you finally get to what's called the map pack, the local organic listing. So this is kind of an opportunity, I would say, because not a ton of companies are doing call only ads right now, and they're really effective. So I would say it's sort of a unique opportunity to position yourself somewhere in the top 3 on mobile. You're going to be one of the first to show up, and you have the opportunity to acquire a lead right away. So if we look at what would happen in a normal situation without call only ads, a normal text ad, if someone clicks this lead or this ad, let's say the cost per click is $9. And so then they would be taken to their website. So on the flip side, if we put a call only ad in there, which is what this example is, so it prompts them right away, call, exterior painting services, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to get them to actually make a phone call as opposed to go to the website. And so it's $9 for that click as well, but I have no problem paying that $9 if it's going to generate me, a low cost lead. So what happens after you click that is they don't necessarily immediately call. They are prompted with an option, so they can still cancel after we spent that $9. And so what we've found is that on average, 1 in 3 who first click that ad will then go and click call. So you're still getting a really low cost per conversion. So let's kind of look at just some math real quick and compare the difference between if we were running a text ad and sending users to our website versus if we were doing a call only ad and trying to prompt users to make phone calls. So just as sort of a baseline example with easy numbers. So if we are using the strategy where we're trying to send users to the website and we have an average cost per click of $20, we know the average conversion rate across all websites is 4%. That means that it's going to cost us $500 for every conversion. Some businesses, that's okay. Most of them, they probably want much better than that, especially if we can get it. Especially for this particular example for a painting company that has, only so high of a average job size. And then on the flip side, if we have call conversions, call only ads, same $20 cost per click, but we have a much higher conversion rate, and we get a much lower cost per conversion at around $57. So with this sort of strategy, we were able to get a constant flow of leads for the client versus if we were to just simply be sending them to the website, it really would not have been a successful campaign. So that's kind of using just some baseline metrics. If we look at the actual case study of exactly what was spent here, this is a real life case study of a sort of a local southeastern Wisconsin Target. They were getting an average of just over 1 lead a day because there's only so many searches available for an average of $55 a conversion. So needless to say, they were very satisfied. If we were sending them to their website, they would have been very dissatisfied. So to sort of, I guess, wrap that strategy up, just to reiterate, definitely something to implement if you have high cost per click. Even if you have a low cost per click, it's still something I would recommend putting out there alongside your normal text ads to test and see really which perform better, assuming your business has the capability to take inbound phone calls as leads. So strategy number 3 goes a bit outside the sort of immediate hard lead generation, I guess, strategies. Strategy number 4, we'll circle back to that in a sec. But in the manufacturing space and the B2B space in general, when you get outside of paid search, you are basically venturing out into social, and it becomes a little bit more challenging to generate just hard leads on demand. And it's really just simply because it's a longer buying cycle, right? So if you're trying to tap into your perfect sort of buying persona in the manufacturing space, and you have a really sort of targeted billboard, what we've found the best way to kind of go through that process is to first get them interested in your brand and your business through something called a lead magnet, which we'll talk through in a minute, that provides value to them, and allows them to learn about your brand and what value your brand has to offer. And then it's sort of a slower, longer nurturing cycle, as I'm sure many of you are well aware in the manufacturing space. So that's what strategy 3 is about. That's what we're going to talk through right now. Is building the top of your funnel with lead magnets via Facebook. So first of all, let's just go ahead and define what a lead magnet is. Not everyone I speak to knows this answer, which is perfectly fine. And so a lead magnet is very simply putting something out there, a free offer given in exchange for receiving a prospect's contact information. So you're giving them something of value. In turn, they're giving you contact information to download that. So download or access that. So we'll talk through some examples of lead magnets in a minute here, but first we're going to talk through just the Facebook channel in general and why we're going to use this channel over other social channels as a step 1. So first, also based sort of on another slide we looked at earlier, this kind of rings true to that same theme. Users are hanging out on Facebook. When we look at where users are hanging out on social in general, Facebook is one of the clear top performers. It's way up there. All those others are much lower. So users are spending time on Facebook. They are frequently visiting Facebook. This chart shows that Facebook is the clear leader in that it is visited several times a day. By 51% of users, it's visited about once a day by 23%, and less often by 26%. But it's a clear leader of where users are spending their time on social. And if we look at some cost considerations here across each channel, so we will be looking at basically cost per click here as sort of the core metric to be able to drive really as much targeted traffic as we can for our offers. One little caveat that I'll mention is YouTube is sort of an outlier in that it's not necessarily designed to drive traffic. It's more designed to drive views. So that aside, if we compare Facebook versus Google Display versus Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, it's very clear that Facebook has by far the lowest cost per click. So essentially, what we know right now after these first couple of slides is that users are spending most of their time on Facebook over other channels, and it is also the cheapest channel at the moment. And so I guess just one thing to touch on before I go past this. So LinkedIn, of course, is a common space that people want to turn to in the B2B and manufacturing space. Unfortunately, the big drawback is that it is just super expensive. It is an average of $6 to $9 for a single click on your ad. So it's almost one of those examples where it can be cost prohibitive, just like the expensive Google keywords. So it does still have its place. We have some campaigns that work since you can get super targeted with them. But really, just since you can get so much more volume out of Facebook, we find Facebook to typically be more effective from a PPC or digital advertising basis. LinkedIn is awesome on more of the organic side for B2B manufacturing. So taking a step further from there, another major benefit about Facebook is that you get to take up so much real estate. You get basically the whole screen with your ad, right? So users are scrolling through all of this content on Facebook every single day, and you get to, as they scroll through, you get to take up the whole screen versus on Google search, just as one example, you would only get, a little box on the top, maybe the top 10% or so. So that's just another big advantage there. And then lastly, targeting capabilities are sort of fire is what this stands for. It's crooked because targeting capabilities are almost awesome on Facebook. There are some drawbacks, namely the biggest one in that you cannot target job title targeting anymore, which makes it difficult for some of the B2B advertising solutions. But we do have some sort of workarounds that we'll talk through in a minute. But sort of aside from that little piece, you can do a lot of really cool targeting things on Facebook. So we'll talk through some audience targeting in a minute and how you can really define your audience and reach the sort of the manufacturing audience that you're looking for. So what medium on Facebook are we going to use? We know that we're going to use Facebook. It's visited the most. It's the lowest cost per click. And what are we going to put out in front of our users? So at the top of the funnel, which is where we're at right now, we're trying to get new users who have not heard of our brand. For the top of the funnel, we want to use video. And with video, the reason for that is it allows us to better hook our audience. So if you just sort of picture yourself as a user sitting on the couch at night or wherever you may be, scrolling through your phone on Facebook, and you're scrolling quickly, what hooks you better? A video typically hooks you much better than just a static image. It grabs your attention and makes you want to learn more about whatever the rest of the video is saying. So it allows you to hook your audience. It allows you to tell your story, your product story and your brand story so much better than any image ever does. And even more importantly, it allows you to get in the heads of your audience and gives you a better chance of your audience remembering you than just a static image would. And then lastly, your lead magnet conversions are really sort of the gravy on top. So at the top of the funnel, it's great if you get some immediate conversions to access your lead magnets, but if you don't, it's really not a big deal, because the benefit in that ad was you just made all of these new users learn about your brand. And if you target effectively, you made a bunch of really targeted users learn about your brand, which you can then go later remarket to. You can remarket to the users who watched your video ad and sort of give them the hard sell a little bit later. So it's easier to get that sort of hard sell from a lead generation perspective if they have heard about your brand, as opposed to if they've never heard about your brand. So we'll talk through that more specifically in the next strategy. So some lead magnet ideas for you. We talked about lead magnets, but like what does that equate to, right? So the idea with a lead magnet is to solve a real problem for your target audience. So think about your target audience and their role and what challenges they face every day and how you can make them better at their job or better at life, or whatever sort of end goal you're trying to get to. This is sort of a step in between. You of course don't want to give away the house, but you want to give away some value so that they see value in your brand. So you want to solve a problem, and there's a bunch of ideas here. So we'll be sending this webinar out for you after, so you can of course refer back to this, but just a few ideas to throw out there. You can put lead magnets out as case studies, as white papers, reports, templates, newsletters, how-to guides, coaching sessions, a list of tips, video tutorials, checklists, webinars, recipes, ebooks, scripts, spreadsheets, any sort of tool that is going to give them value. So if we look at a couple examples here, so one happens to be in the manufacturing space here. So this would be a sort of a checklist download that you're trying to get your audience to opt into to download. So they would provide their information and they would download this checklist. So this might be targeting users who are in a plant that uses conveyor belts. This is a conveyor belt company. So how to make your conveyor belts run faster with less downtime. Download the checklist here. Another one here, X company increased conversions by so much for X% less cost. Download the case study here. That would of course be a digital marketing agency example. Here's one in the B2B space that sells food service packaging, like your to-go packaging when you leave restaurants. So you would be targeting restaurant owners in this case. Restaurant X saved so much on food service packaging by doing this one thing, right? So the point here is you're trying to catch their attention and get them to sort of opt into really your list. So taking that a step further and sort of making it a really easy process for the prospect is to use something called Facebook lead forms. So This particular example, WordStream, is a company that offers software for digital advertising that allows you to really, I guess, more streamline your ad campaigns. And so this particular example for them, their lead magnet is 10 tricks to get the click, right? They're trying to help you do a better job at your job, right? And how to write better ad copy. So to do that, the user would click download, and then they'd be sent over to this form right on Facebook that auto fills with all of the info that Facebook has. They might have to answer, one or two questions, which WordStream would have defined, but they never even have to leave Facebook or go to your website. And then they go ahead and click submit, and it's done. So it's 2 clicks for them. They click download, they click submit, and bam, they were then emailed the lead magnet, and they became sort of a top of funnel prospect for you. So this is not a, hey, give me a quote, or hey, I want to sign up. This is very sort of you're introducing them to your brand at this point. So taking that step a step further, that was a static image example. We have just some business video examples as well. We talked about how to limit conveyor belt downtime in a couple slides back, and so this is actually a real life example of that precise campaign. It was done in video form and did a great job at generating top of funnel leads. I think it was about consistent flow of about $60 a lead on the top of funnel. I say lead, really it's more of a soft prospect, right, at this point, than a hard lead. So just another example for you, an industry news subscription, right? You can see how easy this is. You're scrolling through Facebook, you click the button, and then you click, this is an example in a different language, but it would be, right, I want to sign up for the industry news subscription, and then you click subscribe, and bam, you're done. So the goal is to sort of provide the path of least resistance by using Facebook lead ads. So let's talk about targeting your B2B audience on Facebook. We mentioned that job title targeting is no more, which was sort of a pain point in the Facebook advertising industry. This happened a couple of years ago. So we do have some solutions for you, so don't worry. So sort of the workaround here to find your audience is by taking your best audience as step one, and whatever that may be. So it might be a customer list, right? Whatever your best list is. It might be your most engaged website visitors. It might be those Facebook ad viewers. Might be Facebook followers. And then we're going to create a lookalike audience layered with interest or industry. So let's talk through what this means. So basically, Facebook is taking the information from your best audience, the list that you provide, and it's going to create a new audience that looks just like them based on all of the data points that Facebook has. And on top of that, it's going to narrow it further by people who are interested in manufacturing, for example. And then you end up with really kind of a nice, tight audience that's a fresh audience that has not heard about you. And so it's a great way to sort of dial into that sort of audience that is really the right fit for your business. All right, so strategy number 4, and this kind of pulls strategy number 3 in a little tighter and talks about the bottom of the funnel. So instead of using lead magnets to generate sort of top of funnel soft prospects, now we're going to be using the same Facebook lead forms, but with a different audience targeting. And so we'll be retargeting whatever your best audience is, so they know about your brand, and we're going to be really sort of asking for not the sale, but asking for the opportunity to give them a quote or whatever it may be at this point. So to talk through what that means, just to reiterate why Facebook, right? Users hang out on Facebook. It's the lowest cost per click of core channels. You get to take out most of the screen, and with a little finesse, you can really reach that right audience. So, right, just recapping what we just went through and looking at what audience. So this is where the audience differs. This creates a totally different campaign because we're targeting a totally different audience. So you have a number of different options to choose from, and really it just depends on what your best audience is that you have available. So website visitors, of course, is a common one. You might have a list of users who have recently attended an event that you put on, or a trade show or workshop or webinar. You might have a list of users who opted into that lead magnet campaign that you just ran, or you're an email list or a blog list. Or you can retarget, even if they did not opt into that lead magnet, you can retarget the people who watched that video. And so they've heard about your brand, right? So whatever your best audience is, here is our chance to target them on Facebook and ask for sort of the sale. So what medium, in this case, we're gonna mix a mixture of video and static images. And the reason for that is putting multiple assets out there and sort of mixing them in and rotating them in front of your audience gives you sort of an extra chance of catching their attention, as opposed to just putting one creative out there. And the fact that they already know your brand makes video become less vital, so you don't have to tell that story because they already know who you are. So what's your offer? So this becomes really important here because you're trying to sort of close the sale here, right? So what is the best offer that you can come up with? Can you give them maybe a discount, right? Limited time promo, maybe it's $500 off of, quotes $3,000 or higher, just an example. Maybe you can't, all right? Whatever your best offer is that you can come up with, now's the time to put it out there. So if you can't put out some sort of promo, that's fine. Here's where you're sort of asking for whatever it is you're asking for, right? Free demo, free estimate, free quote, etc. So let's walk through some examples of what this looks like. So we're using Facebook lead ads. So this is an example with the local painting contractor, right? So when you're scrolling through Facebook, this is exactly what the ad would look like. The video would be, in autoplay format. So you're scrolling through, the video would catch your attention because it's moving. You've got this big offer jumping out at you, and then you have the easy get quote button trying to close the sale. Looking at another example, this is in the Medicare industry. So right now it's open enrollment for 2020, started October 15th. And so this is targeting users who are specifically Wisconsin residents who are 65 and up, trying to get them to get a quote for Medicare. And again, would have the play video. So your goal here is to use video to catch their attention. You're retargeting an audience who knows about your brand, and then you're gonna bring them into a lead form. So let's look at sort of that process and how that works. So user clicks the ad, like an example that we just looked at, and then they're taken to this lead form that autofills with the information Facebook has, and you have the ability on your end, as you set this up, to customize any of the questions that you want, right? So whatever information you need, here's a chance to put that out there. The less questions you put out, the higher the conversion rate you're gonna have, but you still have to have the information that you need. And so you sort of will need to think that through. You can do email, phone, you can do phone number, all of these different things. You can even have them manually, type anything in here as well. And so what's awesome about Facebook lead ads is that the user never leaves Facebook. They don't go to your website where they can sort of get lost shuffling around and then maybe lose interest. It's just a 1-2 click and bam, you got a lead. So let's look at sort of a video format of one of those examples that we just looked at a second ago, the Medicare one. This is just a screen recording. And so this shows exactly that process of the user saw the ad, they're caught into this video, and then they click the get quote, and it'll show you just exactly how it works of how they see the form and how they submit. So just to let you watch this for a second here. So they click get quote, all of their info is already submitted. They slide to submit, and then that's it. It's over. You have a lead. So those work really well for lead generation. Last strategy I have for you here today. So this is sort of an interesting strategy that is not necessarily meant for straight lead gen. More so, it's meant for brand awareness to really specific audiences that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to reach or really sort of get your brand in front of. And this is a strategy that I've found is sort of underutilized. I think it can be really effective for brand awareness. So we'll go ahead and sort of talk through what this means, but it's deploying proximity remarketing via display. so we basically get to target users that were anywhere at any given time or are anywhere at any given time. We can do a lot of cool stuff with this. So we'll go ahead and talk through it. So there are a number of different ways that you can use this in the manufacturing space. One way that you can use this is after trade shows or events. So let's just take a scenario here that you have a user who visited your trade show. Let's say you had a booth at the trade show, but you have, you know, a number of other competitors offering the same thing, and the user goes home and they're, you know, sort of thinking through which company they might use. This is just one sort of tactic to separate your brand and keep your brand top of mind as they are making that buying decision. And so this is just one use case for this. And so one really cool capability with this that is not available in other channels is that you can get down to a geographic area as tight as you would possibly like. You can literally take a map and draw where you want your geographic area to be, and I can target people who were previously in that area or are currently in that area, which is a very sort of unique differentiator that is not available via social. It's not available via Google. So we'll look at sort of what channels allow us to do that and sort of talk through this. So Google and YouTube, they do not allow you to do this. You can only get down to the zip code level. That's as tight as you can target. LinkedIn, they do not offer this as well. Facebook and Instagram, they allow you to target down to a 1 mile radius around a point, basically. And that's as tight as you can get. And you also can't say, I want to target people who were within this 1 mile radius from X date to X date earlier this year. It's just not something that Facebook allows. However, proper proximity marketing allows you to get really specific. You can get down to specific addresses. You can target a parking lot if you wanted to, and you can target them historically within any time frame. So it's a big competitive advantage. There's a couple software examples here for you. There's a handful of them out there. They're all third-party ones. These are a couple I like to use. They each have their pros and cons. On-screen media and ground truth are great sort of starting points. And what we're allowed to target is basically visitors to any location during any time frame, either current windows or historic windows, and any frequency. So I could say someone who has visited X manufacturing plant 5 times within the last 30 days, and you would have yourself basically an audience of people who work at that manufacturing plant, just as one example. So what medium? So these are served via display ads. Display ads are basically served across, you know, millions of websites and mobile apps. It's really more about the audience pool than the actual placement of the ad. And so these are just normal banner ads. You can see these, you know, all these blue examples are examples of where your ad could show up as users are surfing the web or mobile apps. And this is all non-social. So how does it work? So user visits a specific location at a specific time. They join your audience pool, and then they're served these ads. These are just some examples of some of the websites or apps of where your ad would be served, right? So there's, you know, a ton of big ones, ESPN, Weather Channel, CNN. So, you know, all the big ones that have ads on their website is where your ad is eligible to show. And then the goal, of course, is to get them to click on your ad, take them to your landing page, and become a prospect, whatever that sort of lead form or phone call, whatever your process might be, and then get into your sales cycle and ultimately become a customer. So let's look at some examples, give you some sort of hard, concrete ideas here to work off of. So the first one we sort of touched base on in the intro slide is trade show visitors, right? So they likely saw your booth. They left the event. They're maybe deciding which brand to use, and you are basically chasing them around the web with banner and or video ads, keeping your brand top of mind while they're making that buying decision. Let's say you are offering dental equipment and supplies, and your target audience is dental office visitors, right? So you could target a big list of dental offices, and you could say people who visited that dentist office with 5 times within the last 30 days, and you have yourself a list of employees, right? Perfect audience that you otherwise wouldn't be able to reach through Google Display or social. Let's say you are a business who sells food conveyor belt products, repairs, or services. So same thing, you can target basically employees at facilities of food conveyor belts, and they might not need your product in that particular moment, but you are sort of building that brand awareness for when the time arises that they do need it. A couple more examples in sort of the B2C space. So this is where it can almost get a little bit creepy with the capabilities that we have today, but this is a real life example of what can be done with this tactic. So let's say you're a personal injury law firm, you could target people who have visited a hospital within the last 2 to 30 days. So people who are recently injured is the perfect audience to get your brand in front of. And let's give you just one last example here. So let's say you're a local high-end Persian rug store. You could target visitors to all of your competitors' stores in the area within the last 30 days. So they're actively shopping for high-end rugs. Again, just the perfect audience to get your brand in front of. And so this is sort of a unique, I guess, capability that really you just don't have unless you go seek out these sort of third-party tools. So let's look at a case study, give you some proof that this does in fact work. So we had a client that does basically medical training events, and so their target audience is doctors and nurses and people who are in medical college, and it's sort of ongoing training courses in the medical field. And so they host these events nationwide, about 20 a year or so. And recently they approached us and they wanted to increase their attendance. So prior to including this type of campaign into the mix, their average registrations were 59. Their goal going into this year was 75. And the only difference in what they did in their marketing mix to promote these was to include this proximity marketing campaign, and it increased registrations by an average of 30 per event. So it definitely does work. It works well. What we targeted in this case was a list of medical facilities within, I believe it was a 40-mile radius around the event, and we targeted them with a criteria that said, I think it was if they visited the facility at least 5 times within the last 30 days. So we had a big pool of doctors and nurses, and we were able to really sort of grow their registrations. Lastly here, just to look at some cost comparisons of what this channel looks like compared to others. This one is more based on CPC and CPM, so cost per click and cost per 1,000 views. And you can see it is a little bit more expensive, right? It's cheaper than LinkedIn, but it is a little bit more expensive than Google Display or Facebook or Instagram. But it reaches such a precise audience that you just can't get elsewhere. Where I personally, I think it's worth it. And I mean, the case study before sort of proves that. So really, to make this effective, you do need to spend a good $1,000 a month or so at a minimum. Any more than that, you're just not quite getting the reach that you need to. So to summarize, we walked through today 5 digital advertising strategies for manufacturers that you can implement today. The first being paid search, right? It just simply can't be overlooked because it's so important. And this is capturing users while they're in their intent mindset. Second being incorporating call-only ads. So this is great if your keywords are too expensive. If not, it still works fantastic. So I definitely recommend testing that out alongside your text ads. The third being building your top of funnel with lead magnets via Facebook. And this is really great for the manufacturing space because sales cycles typically are so long. So it's, you always want to keep that top of funnel growing so that you can, make those closes, close those sales later down the funnel. And then four, further down the funnel, is generating those real sort of hard leads with Facebook lead ads by retargeting those really ideal audiences. And then lastly, number five is deploying proximity remarketing via display to reach that fresh, precise audience. So with that, we will go ahead and move to Q&A. So if you have any questions at this time, if you haven't already submitted them, feel free to put them through in the chat box, and we'll spend a little bit of time here answering those.
Great, thanks, Barrett. That was great information and really, really helpful. We have two questions that have come in so far. The first one is there a use case where it would make sense to advertise on LinkedIn despite the higher cost?
Yeah, it's still applicable for the B2B space specifically. I really would not recommend it for B2C. But for the top of funnel, lead gen, if you have a lead magnet that you have prepared, it's still applicable and you can still drive top of funnel leads. I would say typically it's just going to be a little bit more expensive of a lead than you could get on Facebook, just simply because every cost $6 to $9. So you do have to have really sort of a high converting lead magnet for it to be worth it. But it's always something to test, right? If you're ever not sure, the best route is to test both channels and see which wins.
Great. What are some best practices, excuse me, for developing landing pages that increase the opportunity for conversion?
Great question. There are a number of tools out there that are great for landing page generation. Unbounce is an easy one that I could recommend that have really nice templates that are proven to convert really well. So if anything, you could use that as a basis, even if you're not building it specifically in there. But it's short and sweet, to the point. You don't want to allow the user to have many options that they can sort of click around and go to different pages. You really sort of want to have one strong call to action and one kind of point that you're trying to get across.
Great. And one more question that has just come in. We are a manufacturer of a niche product line in the food service equipment business. Do you have any suggestions for increasing the effectiveness of our Google Ads performance against our online retailers, for example, Amazon and others? We seem to be competing with a variety of our own online retailers for the same search terms, and Amazon ads are almost always displayed ahead of ours. This person says, over the last 18 months, we have seen our Google Ads performance, such as impressions and clicks, fall off substantially, while our CPC has doubled.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a number of factors that could go into that. So we see Amazon as either the number one competitor or the top few competitors in most spaces where there's a product that Amazon is selling. So they're definitely a tough one to beat. Most of the time, it really just comes down to budget, assuming you have a nice, tight, well put together campaign. I mean, budget's going to be the big way to beat them. I would say the fact that your cost is sort of doubled over the last, I think you said 18 months or so, is not really abnormal. The cost in digital advertising in general just continues to rise on every single channel. Double might be a little bit of an extreme example, but it is a general trend where the cost does increase as time goes on. And as time goes on, it becomes more and more competitive as well. So it might be something where you might need to reconsider the budget that you have in place if you're really just not able to show up. There are a number of different bid strategies you could test to try to appear higher in the search results. You can do some experiments within Google Ads that will allow you to get higher. You could test things like target impression share, maximize clicks, maximize conversions. Just depends on your goal, right? So I imagine you have a set budget, as everyone does. And so if that's the case, you almost have to make a conscious decision of what's important to you. Is it important to generate as many leads at the lowest possible cost? If that's the case, maybe paying attention to what your rank is with your ad is less important. Or if it's more important to show up all the time, that's a different strategy. So there are there's a number of different factors that go into that. So we are happy to do audits if that's something you're interested in. But aside from that, I would say those are kind of the few big ones. The short answer is budget is probably the biggest one. So.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody, for the great questions. And we have bumped up against our end time here. So real briefly, just two quick things. We really appreciate your feedback on today's presentation. If you have a QR code reader on your phone, you can go ahead and scan the code that's on the screen right now and take our very brief survey. There's also a bit.ly link too. We'll be sending that out to you in the follow-up email with the webinar recording in the next couple of days. So thank you in advance for taking a minute to share your thoughts. We really value them and appreciate them. And lastly, just a brief reminder that our Manufacturer Month Learning Series wraps up next Wednesday with our Content Marketing Strategies for Manufacturers webinar. If you haven't already registered, we hope you'll consider joining us. You can find all of the details and register at learnatnorthwoods.com/octoberlearning. So with that, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate your time and have a wonderful day.